The new parts have arrived from the factory without issue. They'll be fitted to the car in time for the next session.
What's going on, guys? It's Luke22SV here, back with the 11th round of the Mick Schumacher career mode here for the German Grand Prix. And this is our home Grand Prix this weekend as well, so coming straight off the back of a very controversial episode in Silverstone, and round 31 of the actual career mode as well, round 10 of the season 2. As you can see, Ferrari got the best car, Renault are now second, we're fourth. McLaren have actually had a huge jump up as well, which is what they have needed after falling back down the order towards the clutches of Williams, and Williams are actually improving quite steadily over the course of the season as well. So hopefully for them and McLaren, we'll see them close towards the midfield. But coming into this weekend, we are looking strong in the championship. We're leading the championship by some margin at the moment, 18 points over Daniel Ricciardo. So we head into qualifying for the German Grand Prix, our home Grand Prix. We did quite well here last season in a slightly uncompetitive car. Of course, we had the safety car as well last year, and of course we ended up actually pitting underneath the safety car for ultra soft tyres, which in turn managed to gain us so many positions in the latter half of the race. And in qualifying, I didn't realise this until the race, but for some reason I forgot to load my setup onto the car, and we're running a default setup for the entire weekend. So we've got our work cut out here to see if we can actually do well. But we're running the default setup. If we had perhaps our setup that we used last season at this race and our actual setup that we've got, then perhaps we would be even more competitive. But we're going to have to really wring the car out here, and that is exactly what we're doing on this qualifying lap. Just coming around these corners, we haven't been pushing so hard around here, and just making sure we can lose as little time as possible. And we're up on our lap, which is what we need to be, because we're currently P12, and I thought that lap for P12 was a good lap, but it turns out it wasn't, and we were down in P12 behind our teammate though. So Leclerc obviously not getting the best out of his car this weekend. Maybe Sauber haven't got the best car around here as well. But we are up by some fair margin now on our previous lap time, and we're going to come across the line, and this is going to be enough for P2 behind Nico Hülkenberg on the front row for his home Grand Prix as well. So that was probably put more effort into getting second here than we saw in Austria, where we got pole by some margin as well. But as you can see there, 3 Germans in the top 4 at the home Grand Prix, so it's just looking competitive then for all the 3 Germans on the grid. Myself, Hülkenberg and Sebastian Vettel. Only Carlos Sainz getting in the way there. As you can see, Ferrari looking a bit more competitive than they have in the last few races. Mercedes getting the car up there as well. Bottas this time being a lead Mercedes driver. As we head into the race then for the German Grand Prix. What can we do in the home Grand Prix? It's going to be a huge question of, well, whether we can actually keep up at the top, because with this default setup it's going to be a hard and long race for us, and it's not going to be easy. We're going to be making a few mistakes. I didn't even realise I was running a default setup until I think a couple of laps into the race, when I realised the car did not feel as good as it perhaps could at this weekend. And well, we move on to the grid then for the German Grand Prix, with, of course, Hülkenberg leading the way. So the German lockout on the front row. Sebastian Vettel just missing out on being 3 Germans at the top. Could we see that at the end of the race, though? That would be interesting. Carlos Sainz third. Could be 3 Germans on the podium. Bottas, Raikkonen, Ricciardo. Both the Red Bulls struggling this weekend as well. And Alonso making use of those McLaren's upgrades. They're actually getting quite high up on the grid, although 11th is not really that high. But Van Dorn back where in 18th though, but that is where we're used to seeing Van Dorn anyway. But we'll head on to the start of this race then for the German Grand Prix, our home Grand Prix of Season 2, with the 5 red lights coming on now. Can we get a good enough start? And can we get a good start? No, it's a fairly poor start actually. Carlos Sainz is away well, and so is Sebastian Vettel. So we're heading into turn 1, and it's a good start from Vettel. We're on the outside of Carlos Sainz. Vettel's jumped us, so it is 3 Germans leading the way at the start then. And 3 Germans on the podium by the looks of it at this stage, with all different cars as well. So a Renault leading, a Ferrari leading a Sauber, but Carlos Sainz is going to be hot on our tail heading towards the turn 6, and the long hairpin, one of the biggest hairpins on the calendar really. And can we get close enough to make a move on Sebastian Vettel into that hairpin? probably a little bit too far back as we head into that corner. You see everyone else going wheel to wheel behind us. Valtteri Bottas looked interested on Carlos Sainz heading up towards the stadium section then of this track. Obviously, the track has been butchered over time before. Pre-2002, this track was probably one of the best in the world, and now it's just it's just another Tilkedrome, really. But heading towards the end of this lap, then towards the stadium where the man in front of us went off famously last season in a real life season, of course. But this time we're fighting with him in the game, and he's looking fairly good this weekend, but not as good as his compatriot in front of him, Nico Hulkenberg, who fresh off the win in Britain as well. So can Hulkenberg start getting another challenge for the title? Can he start making up positions? Of course, he's looking to get back-to-back wins here as well. But here's a replay of the start then, and we cut across straight away to Carlos Sainz. A fairly poor start, and we could have been jumped by both of them, really, had it not been... had we not cut in front of Carlos Sainz, it ended up slowing him down a little bit as well. But we do get back ahead of Carlos Sainz, and Vettel is in front of us. Bottas challenging as well. As you can see, Raikkonen in the background, along with Sergio Perez, who's done quite well here for Force India. I think he got ahead of Kimi Raikkonen there, as you can see, just about. Yeah, Raikkonen and both the Red Bulls as well, struggling this weekend. Not what we're used to seeing this season, but they have started to fall back a little bit down, perhaps, with Renault and Ferrari and ourselves climbing the constructors. It's been a huge development race so far this season, with the new rules and regs coming in for this season. But as you can see, both the two Germans in front of us and ourselves leading the way then after the first lap. As you can see Hulkenberg and Vettel not really getting away from us at the moment on lap 2. Can we get close enough to perhaps get a move on Sebastian Vettel? We're in a second of him, but Carlos Sainz is also close to us as well, and it doesn't really look like we're going to be able to get close enough to him. Haven't quite got the right aero that we want. As you can see, we've changed the brake bias a little bit, and we're going to have to change the downforce, the aero as well on the pit as well. So we're just trying to make do, trying to perhaps just improvise with what we've got. And unfortunately, it looks like we're going to be in for a tough race then at this point, with a default setup and just a few changes. Carlos Sainz is hanging on to the back of us at this point. Renault perhaps look like they've got the fastest car this weekend, and as that's being proved by Hulkenberg and perhaps by Carlos Sainz as well in qualifying. He got third on the grid. We only just managed to split them both. And well, here we are heading towards the end of lap 2 then on these ultra soft tyres, which will be going away fairly shortly. Can only last a few laps really around here before we will switch over to these soft tyres. As Hulkenberg again putting in another fastest lap of the race. He's leading the way quite comfortably. Vettel's not really challenging him at the moment, but heading on to lap 4 then. We skipped the lap and now we're on lap 4. Reset a purple sector 1, and we're going to be boxing at the end of this lap as well. And well, you can see Vettel's actually closed in on a bit of Nico Hulkenberg, so maybe Vettel's coming back into this race as well. Starting P4, that would be a good result for him. Hasn't, of course, won in Hockenheim in real life. So if Vettel wins at Hockenheim today, that would be a good result for him. But Carlos Sainz is closing in on us, and you can see the proximity arrow there. And he's really close to us actually, and we're struggling on these ultra soft tyres. And Carlos Sainz decided to make a move down the inside in one of the probably the worst overtaking spots on the calendar. Why would you attempt to overtake into that corner? Carlos Sainz and myself just collided there, and now Carlos Sainz is having to face rejoining the race at the back of the grid. And we boxed for some new tyres as well. We come into the pit, getting as fast as possible into the pit entry rather, and we get the pit limiter on. But as you can see, yellow flags there. Carlos Sainz down at the back. He's lost a lot of time, and I don't really know why he attempted an overtake into that corner. It was just ridiculous, really. He should have waited. He should have been a bit more patient than that. And that's the problem with some of the AIs on this game, is that they don't really understand basically how to drive like a proper F1 driver. They're all a bit Maldonado-y sometimes, the F1 drivers on this game. But we're going to view a replay of what happened with Carlos Sainz. Here's the replay, here's the onboard, and he's looking to make a move down the inside of us. Perhaps he should have waited, I think, and there's just no way his two cars going to get into that corner. And, well, there you go. Carlos Sainz going to have to face rejoining the race at the back. You can see everyone's waiting to go past him. And this is also something I don't really understand. He could easily have joined back on the track there, but of course he's decided to wait for everyone to go past him, and just already stopped But yeah, we're moving on to lap 5. We're coming out of the pits. Well, we come out of the pits and we're on our first lap and we run a bit wide and get a track limit warning after that. But you can see Sergei Sorokin in front of us, but Sebastian Vettel, we obviously pitted before Vettel and Hulkenberg as well, who hasn't pitted yet either. So Vettel's just pitted and he's rejoined in front of us. So we haven't been able to get an undercut on Vettel, so we probably struggled to warm these tyres up a little bit. Maybe the setup didn't help there, but Sebastian Vettel is in front of us. We haven't been able to get in front of him. So he was quite close to Hulkenberg though, so if we can keep with Vettel on this lap, and perhaps we can challenge Hulkenberg on the pit exit, because he's going to be on worn tyres now. Those ultra softs are really going to start to go off this lap, which is good news for us. As you saw there, we easily got past Sergei Sorokin, which is what we are hoping to see Hulkenberg just have a similar sort of pace in the Renault. But Vettel's 2 seconds down the road. We dip our wheel onto the gravel a bit, coming towards the stadium section of this track, and coming towards then the last few corners. Hulkenberg's now in the pits. Vettel's going to be going past. The McLaren actually gets out of the way nice and easily there, so no worries for Vettel. And we come across the start and finish straight into turn 1. Hulkenberg coming out of the pits, and it looks like Sebastian Vettel's got ahead of him, and as you can see, yes he has, and Hulkenberg's right there, so he's managed to stay in second, but we're a lot closer to Hulkenberg than we were before we pitted. And Hulkenberg's lost the lead of this race. Good, about to be losing P2 as well. We got DRS, and can we get close enough to make an overtake? We haven't really got the ERS going though. We're still in the low mode, and we're not getting close enough to Hulkenberg to perhaps make a move. Or are we? Very late on the brakes, and we dive down the inside, but we go straight on, and Hulkenberg's going to say thank you very much. No chance of you getting past there, and he keeps hold of P2, and we lose perhaps potentially our only chance of getting P2 in this race. Leclerc, however, is up into P4, so after his poor qualifying, he's now managed to gain a few places as well. But moving on to lap 9, we're still there with Hulkenberg. We've got DRS on this little straight here, heading up towards probably the main overtaking spot on this track, perhaps the only overtaking spot on this track, which is the DRS straight here. We are really good in sector 1 at the moment. We're just able to take turn 1 really well. Sometimes we go a bit too extreme and we get a track limit warning, but that's not too much of a problem. But we are getting close enough to Hulkenberg now to perhaps consider a move on the next lap. Lap 10 is when we would consider a move, perhaps, if we can keep with him at this point. This is where he gets away from us, because of course our lack of having a good setup is really slowing us down in these corners. And we have edited the front wing as well in the pit stops. We changed it from 6 to 4, which is given us a little bit, should make us better in a straight line, but a little bit slower in the corners. And perhaps I was regretting it at this point, because we actually were struggling really badly in the corners, and perhaps if we had a full decent setup, and even with lower aero on the front, we would have had be able to make up with it with suspension and everything else, and of course the tracking as well. But unfortunately this is a situation we're in, but we are close to Hulkenberg, and we got a good exit out of turn 1 again, as you can see. Are we going to consider making a move? He goes to the inside to defend a little bit there, and that allows us to close in a lot, and taking that line really slowed him down. But coming through the next straight, we're really close to him now. We've got DRS. Can we get the move on Hulkenberg? He goes to the inside to defend. We go to the inside to attack. He goes to the outside to defend. We brake nice and late, but we outbrake ourselves a little bit going into the hairpin. He's going to get alongside us perhaps, and he does get alongside us. So Hulkenberg retakes the second again. So nice little battle going on here with Hulkenberg. But again, he goes to the inside. We cut back underneath him, and could have been a very big crash there had we have judged that wrong. But we are up into P2 at this stage. And now, can we get away from Hulkenberg? Can we focus on catching up to Sebastian Vettel? That is the question on our minds at the moment. As you see, Vettel is a couple seconds down the road, but he hasn't shot off into the distance like we perhaps would expect him to. But Renault not having the best race here as they would have liked, to be fair. Starting first and third on the grid. Sainz obviously having an incident with me. Now we've got past Hulkenberg, so Hulkenberg will be looking to get past us again. Can we get away from him? However, we got a huge battle though with our ERS, and hoping to save as much as possible, but we're saving that. It's going to slow us down. So is Hulkenberg going to be able to close in on us and perhaps get his own back on the last lap? As you can see, he's got DRS as well. He's within a few tenths of us, coming down the main back straight up towards the hairpin. The main overtaking opportunity, Hulkenberg spots his opportunity, goes down the inside, and is he going to be able to make that stick? He does. It's a good overtake from Hulkenberg. We're not able to cut back underneath, and he managed to retake P2. So disappointment for us. Bottas takes P4 away from Leclerc as well whilst that happens. So Bottas doing well at Mercedes' home Grand Prix as well. So good news for Hulkenberg. He's got back up into P2, but it's still looking like a 3 Germans on the podium at this stage, because P4 is miles behind us, and going through the stadium section we get very close to Hulkenberg, almost considering a move down the inside into that curve, but not thinking that's the right opportunity. We're waiting for the start-finish straight, and perhaps and there's news that a teammate's dropped out of the race as well. So Leclerc's dropped out of the race. Looks like his engine's failed. So, and looks like someone else has dropped out of the race as well. It looks like Force India slowed down. Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc both retiring with engine-related issues in the end, which is disappointment for our team. So we got to get the most points out of it today, just like we had to do in at the start of the season. I think it was in Bahrain. But here we are going down the inside of Hulkenberg again, and we get past Hulkenberg. Can we stay ahead of him this time? Yellow flags at turn 1. Someone's going slowly. Who could that be? It's actually a Red Bull going slowly. So problems for one of the Red Bulls. We may be able to see that next time around. It looks like he's a puncher for one of the Red Bulls. We're hoping it's probably Daniel Ricciardo, who's our closest rival in this championship. But Red Bull really having a struggle at the moment. Max Verstappen failing to score in Silverstone. No thanks to Charles Leclerc, who took him out with just a few corners left. Almost ending our race in the last race to Charles Leclerc. But we did end up finishing P4 when it could have been P2. But enough about that last race. Leclerc, I just thought it was Bahrain from last season where Leclerc retired with an engine problem. But this is now moving on to just 3 laps to go. Nothing really happened in the last couple of laps. It was Max Verstappen who had the tyre blowout. He had to come and pit, and he ended up finishing a lap or so down. But with just a couple laps left, we've got run wide in the last corner, which is going to give Hulkenberg a nice little taste, and he goes down the inside into turn 1 and takes P2 away from us. But we cut back underneath. We get the bear exit out of turn 1. We're up into P2, and after that little scare, we've now got 2 laps to defend from Hulkenberg. Nothing happened between lap 11 and lap 15 really, so we skipped on then, and we got Hulkenberg really looking for P2 again. And this is we're giving the German fans a real good show here this weekend, with Hulkenberg, Vettel and Schumacher all fighting on the podium. We decide to give Hulkenberg the time. We go back down the inside, bit of contact though, and well, we managed to get away with that. But warning for a collision with Hulkenberg. Well, we do have P2. We did dive down the inside of him, but it wasn't too bad. It was just a slight little tap. But running a bit wide, locking up again. Locked up several times in this race so far. With just a poor setup on us. The default setup really isn't that good. But with just 1 lap to go then, after this few corners we run wide again. These soft tyres are starting to go off a little bit here. Max Verstappen setting the fastest lap on a new ultra soft tyres. So after pitting after a puncture, he's now a lap down and out of the points. So Daniel Ricciardo is the Red Bull's only hope for points. And we could actually, with the way results are, we could almost, but Hulkenberg going down the inside onto the last lap into turn 1 again. Slight contact again. So Hulkenberg and ourselves making more contact here. That could have been even worse. That could have put one of us out of the race, if not both of us then, with both our wheels knocking into each other. But Hulkenberg just getting ahead of us with just 1 lap to go. But can we get DRS to get close enough to and overtake him? This is our only opportunity now to get back past Hulkenberg. Can we do it into this hairpin? We think to go out to the outside, but we do go to the inside. We lock up our brakes, and we do get the move done, and we force him out wide. And it's a good move from us to get back up to P2. And as I was just saying before that happened, Ricciardo is, I think, enough points behind us now with the way results are to end up being a win over 25 points over a win behind us, which means we have a win in hand. So we could almost afford to retire from a race and still be leading the way in the championship. I think that's how results stand. But we run wide again, going into the stadium section. It looks like Sebastian Vettel's going to win this race. And there's going to be 3 Germans on the podium, with Schumacher coming second and Hulkenberg going to be crossing the line in third, unless we run wide here again. but it's not to be. We crossed the line in second. It's a good result for us, but in the end it's just Hulkenberg and Vettel swapping positions in the end. Well, Vettel having a great race from 4th on the grid. We finished 2nd, and 3 Germans on the podium at the home Grand Prix. That's exactly what you wanted to see, particularly for the German fans as well, who would love to see that one day potentially, although Hulkenberg's never had a podium and Schumacher's not in F1 yet, so maybe one day if things get lucky. But here's the podium there, as you can see, for all 3 Germans on the podium. Vettel happiest of them all. We're quite happy with that because we struggled with our lack of setup this weekend, but yeah, there you go. We're leading the championship by some margin now. Ricciardo's struggling again. He's P6. Red Bull really not having a good run. Toro Rosso getting both cars in the points though, so Toro Rosso looking good in the recent races as well. There you got some upgrades as well recently, and both of the McLarens getting 12th and 13th, and then Williams down in 15th and 16th. Carlos Sainz was not able to recover in the end, and Max Verstappen was down there as well. And of course my teammate was down there, and we're over a win ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, 28 points it looks like, so ideal for us. And Charles Leclerc slipping down the order, and as you can see Hulkenberg and Vettel climbing their way up as well, so that's good news for them, and good news for Renault and Ferrari, who are gaining points all the time now on the teams like Mercedes and Red Bull. Of course they're struggling, which is exactly what we need for our championship challenge. We need to keep improving the Sauber car, and Renault and Ferrari need to improve. But as you can see, the constructors, Ferrari have actually jumped Renault there as well. It could have been a better weekend for Renault. Only got 15 points when it could have been about 40, but they're closing in on for Mercedes. Mercedes will be looking over their shoulder. By the way it's looking, I think Mercedes will end up finishing 5th. But that's going to be the end of the episode there. Thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in a couple days' time for the Hungarian Grand Prix.